both quite young when war broke out. Do you still have vivid memories of it?
Yes, many memories. I was very frightened during the war, but we've got lots of memories of being bombed out and over the clods, you know, walking over the clods and going out, and the bombs dropping and the landmines dropping.
War broke out. Do you still have vivid memories of it?
Yes, I have. Yes, I was petrified during the war years because you didn't know where the bomb was going to land. We had to sleep under the table and afraid to go upstairs. And I was just so frightened, but some of it was exciting really, because if there was a landmine dropped somewhere in the village, then we would be out next morning to see what we could find, you know, pieces of this and pieces of that. But no, it wasn't nice at all.
How old were you during the war years?
I was 9, 10.
So very young. Really.
Very young. Yes,
Did you understand what was going on?
Not to the depth, you know. I mean, I knew the bombs were coming, and I could tell which was the German plane and which was the English plane. And,
how could you tell?
Well, they had a different sound. The Germans, they droned in, but our planes just came a different sound altogether. So they used to say that I could always tell which was which, and then we would dive under the table.
When you heard airplanes coming, did you react in any way? Did you wave out of the window or anything like that?
No, we weren't allowed to let any light out of the windows. We weren't allowed to touch the windows because the light might shine out. There was no lights anywhere, no street lights, and you had to have shutters or blackouts at the windows because we weren't allowed to even use a torch unless it had a sort of cap on it so there was no light shine at all anywhere, so we daren't peep out.
Did you find it difficult living in those circumstances?
Well, we were a very happy family, you know. We were all united there together, and we did actually cope with it, because Mum and Dad were strong, I suppose, and helped us through it, you know.
I suppose they had no choice, really, but to be strong.
Had to be strong.
Your sisters, and you, in fact, were much younger, weren't you?
Yes.
What are your memories?
Well, I was only 5 when the war started, so I can't remember the actual beginning. But I do remember the bombs, like Pat says, and under the table, and the doodlebugs. They used to come across the sky with all the flames coming out the back, and when the flames went, then you just stood and waited because you didn't know where it was going to come down. It could come down on you, or just hope and pray it didn't come down on someone else. And they were hard times, but I didn't know any different, because from 5 to 11, I lived through the war, and it was everyday life. You had your gas mask, and you had your rations, and that was it. You know, we were happy. I mean, none of these gardens had lawns. They were all vegetables, because everyone dug for victory and set their vegetables, and Father used to go out and catch a rabbit or whatever he could, and we were never hungry, never. All those years we didn't have anything.
Even though
much.
there was rationing?
There was rationing, but we were never hungry, and I just don't know how my mother coped to feed us all, really. Because there was, you know, there was nothing. You couldn't go down the shop and buy, only what the rations you had.
Do you remember what you ate?
Oh, I remember suet puddings, rabbit pie, yes, yeah. And we had whatever was available. The vegetables from the garden, of course, everything came from the garden.
Were you aware that things were in very short supply?
Well, we were, but it was a way of life. We didn't take any notice. The children today would notice because they have everything. But, I mean, we didn't have it, so we didn't miss it. If we had our sweet cones and we spent all our sweet cones on the first week, well, that was it. We had no sweets then, unless Mum and Dad gave us some. Clothes and coupons, couldn't have a new coat. If Pat had a new coat, I had to wait till the next month because we had no coupons. So it was just a way of life. We didn't know anything any different. And I mean, I hadn't seen a banana or a grapefruit or anything till the war ended, because there was just nothing like that at all.
Can you remember your first taste of a banana?
No, not really. I remember the first look, but not the first taste, no. And at school, they used to give us powdered milk and powdered chocolate and codly foil and malt, like sticky toffee. Well, we were given that at school. Well, before we got home, we'd eaten half of it because it was such a treat. We'd eat it before we got home from school and take half a tin home to Mum. That's right, isn't it?
That's right. Yes, cod liver and malt.
Do you remember being taught how to put your gas masks on?
Yes, yes.
Where did that happen? Describe
At
that.
school, right?
School. School. We had gas mask practice, you see. We had to put the gas mask on, and then we had to run across the road and lay on the riverbank. This was all practice, but I mean, and it did happen in reality later because we had to get out of school and lay on the side of the river because we hadn't got any shelters, you see. In later in years, they built a shelter.
That must be a very vivid memory. What actually happened?
What, on the river?
Yeah,
In the river?
when you were doing it for real, what
Well,
as
we
against the
just as
practice?
quick as we could, you see. We
But
had
what
to-
were the circumstances that led to that?
Well, the siren. When the sirens went off, something was around, you see, and then we had to get out of the school and lay on the riverbank in the Mill Meadow with our gas masks. We didn't put them on. We had to carry them with us, but we didn't put them on because there was no gas. And then we had to stay there until the all clear went and back into school.
But sometimes we had to walk up the village with them on. I remember walking up the village with a gas mask on, and they used to check them about once a month, didn't they, and put a thing underneath them and you had to breathe in to make sure they were working. But the thing that highlighted our war years was Squadron Leader Douglas Foreman, DFC.
Tell me about.
He had a plane which he piloted, and if he was coming to Roxwell, the Union Jack would go up at Duke's Manor, and we all knew he was coming, and we just used to wait. He used to swoop all these rooftops, all round the village, circle round, salute us all and fly off. And we were children, and we were that excited when Douglas was coming. We were all out waiting for him. Yeah.
And how often would this happen?
Well, whenever he could get away to come and visit us. It wasn't that often, but it was whenever he could get this way.
And my friend who lived in the end house up there, Jean, she had a broken leg, so we had quite an adventurous time because we were in that window. Then she had to hop across to the back window to catch him because he would literally nearly touch the top of the tree.
But unfortunately, he got killed in a training exercise. And that was very sad. The whole village was in mourning. So it was just very sad because the children, although we didn't know him personally, he was Douglas, who we all loved because he brightened up our war days. Yes, that was very nice.
One of the big memories for you is the bomb that went off in this street.
Yes.
Can you describe that for me? You remember the day?
The day was October 1940, and we were all indoors baking chestnuts, roasting the chestnuts, because we had an open grate in those days, you see, coal. And all of a sudden, well, can't describe it really, can you? The bombs dropped. Bombs were dropping, and one went in between those two houses there, and we lived at number 6. And the next thing, no lights, no nothing, you know. And then the Home Guard and all the other organisations appeared to say that one hadn't gone off. One bomb hadn't gone off, so we had to get out for the night, be evacuated out for the night. Well, fortunately, we had an uncle in the village at Deal Store, so we had somewhere to go. And I remember now coming out of the gate, and the whole place was all clods of earth. You know, you had to scramble all over this with Mum holding my hand and
Crying, probably.
We were probably crying, and but we just had to leave everything and go. I mean, the windows were all broken and things like that, but you just had to go because the bomb hadn't gone off. It went off the next morning. Then we could come home and start to clear up.
Do you remember it?
Oh, yes.
You
yes,
tell me
quite
your
vividly.
memories of it.
Well, I can remember what Pat says, that we were roasting chestnuts, and you could hear this terrible swish. And I always remember my mother saying, "This one has got us." I can remember it now. And it was just terrifying. And about 4 times you heard this swish, but as they were coming down the fields and over, I suppose it was the noise of them coming down. And then you stood there a little while and it was quiet, and then you knew they'd just gone, and then we just had to pick ourselves up and, you know, We hadn't got any lights. We'd got an oil lamp alight. We'd had electricity put on that year, but the oil lamp was alight. And that had been, every time a bomb dropped, the oil lamp had gone right up, you know, all the flame had gone up. And we just gathered ourselves together and, well, I don't really know. Mother said, you know, we've got to go. And as Pat said, we were taken off down to the village. But it was quite, well, you look back now, you think it was quite an adventure. But, I mean, we didn't realise how serious it all was. We knew we could get killed, probably, but we didn't really realise how serious it all was.
Were you frightened? Do you remember being
Well, I was frightened, but Pat was more frightened than me. I can remember having to sit on her when I was a little girl to keep her down because she used to shake so much.
You still shake?
I was frightened, yes. Yeah. But, I mean, we went to school. We took a gas mask. Always had a gas mask. And if we were out playing and the siren went, we had to run home as quick as we could. And we played in all the fields around here. You know, when you look back now, you think, how did we do it all? We coped because we had to cope.
Everybody talks about that sense of community that existed during the war that doesn't exist today. Would you agree with that?
Oh,
or do you think it's a kind of
definitely no.
strange nostalgia?
No, definitely. That's something that doesn't exist today. We lived as a family, more or less, in this road. We were all... Everyone's door was open. You could go if you were in trouble. And there was always someone, your house you could go to. We were more like a family in one street. Because lots of the men were away fighting. There's lots of women on their own. So the families that had got a man in the household had to help the ones that hadn't. Yeah, it was definitely a very close relationship with everyone.
Right. Just over there where that fir tree is now.
We're running.
Ella Evans, you lived here during the war years. You've lived here all your life.
Yeah.
What was life like during the war here?
Well, very well, very well. Everybody was helpful, everybody chimed in with everybody and just helped one another. That's all I can say. Very nice.
A lot of vegetable gardens here. Is this how it was during the war?
Yes, yes. And also allotments at the back. But we all had our gardens, we all helped one another, and what one hadn't got, the other one helped one another with. That's all was in it. Looked after the children, if anybody wanted to go off and all things as that, you know. Really was good. I can't grumble about the... I know we were bombed out, and I know that we had a bad life, but we took it, you know, we enjoyed it, had to enjoy ourselves as best as we could, if you know what I mean.
How did you enjoy yourself?
Well, I don't think I had much time to keep on what we were having the backs we put on me and running about doing jobs for different people, looking after my old parents and all like that, you know. I was really occupied. I used to go out sometimes the evening over to the camp and with the soldiers because their wives were billeted on me, so I used to go over to the dances with them, you see. It was like, you know, quite nice really, the one thing and another. I can't grumble about it at all, you know. Not some people I think might have had it worse than what we did, but I think by we all knocking in with one another, things went more smoother, you know.
You had evacuees here.
Yes.
And you had officers' wives here.
Yes.
Tell me first of all about the evacuees. What would happen there?
Well, if you got room in your house, you couldn't argue. They just told you you've got to take these people. They come from London or wherever they brought them from. And they used to come and bring them here for so long at the time. And then they'd move them on to somewhere else and I'd have some different ones, you know. But I had some very nice people, really. I had a black family, what was, they were comical they were, because what they ate was so funny, you know. They ate all fruit and things like that, you know. Didn't eat what we did. That was, for breakfast they would have apples and bananas and things like that. Of course, I used to have to go into Chelmsford to get all these things for them.
I shouldn't imagine they were easy to get either, bananas particularly.
Well, they used to have like stamps on a card, and they used to give me these to go and get their food with, you see. That was how I found going to get the fruit and that for them. And some sort of oats that they used to eat, you know. But they gave me the thing, and I used to have to go into Chelmsford to get them.
I would have thought that in those days, a black family in a tiny village like this was a real rarity.
Well, they come here, and a matter of fact, the weekend, it was, that did worry me then, at the weekend, all their relations come. So I couldn't get them indoors, but she helped usually. One we had them out on the lawn. We couldn't get them indoors. But if I'd have let them indoors, but the lady who is over all these things, you know, she said, well, I'm very pleased you didn't let them in, because if you'd got them in, they wouldn't have went. They would have stayed, you see. But eventually we did manage to get rid of them, and they left the children and that here, you know, and went off. But they weren't with me long, because I think that the mothers wanted to be with them, you know, and so they just took them.
How many other young children did you have here as evacuees?
Oh, I can't remember. They used to come with the families, you see. The mothers used to come with the children. I can't remember all of that, but I was never without an evacuee here. And then when they went, I had Land Army girls.
Tell us about the Land Army girls.
She was a milk girl up the farm. And she came from Dagenham. That's where she came from. And she was quite a nice girl, but she got tangled up with a sailor, and that was it. So I lost her, but she really was lovely. She was a character, wasn't she, Lil?
Did she marry him in the end?
Yes, he married her. But that was a bit funny. That was a funny little wedding, that was. Very funny.
Did you mind having all these people in your house?
Well,
Because they were strangers to you, and it seems to me that you were continually having people staying in your house.
Yeah, well, they just claimed your house if you didn't take them in. You see, people who've got room, they got to come. There was no if and on about it. But having all different people, it was really fun, you know. And then we had the Americans. They used to come down here, and oh dear. As I say, that in one way or another, it was quite fun.
What did the Americans get up to?
Oh, don't know. They used to. Well, my husband used to go down and have a drink. I used to stay here, and he used to go down and get a drink on a Saturday. He used to meet these Americans, and he used to bring them up here, and they used to come up, and well, they used to bring the food with them, you see, and I used to have to cook it and that, and kept Betty in sweets. But they were very nice too, American, and I used to do their washing. And things like that, you know. They used to find the soap and things, powders, but I used to do the washing.
Did you remain friends with any of the people that came and stayed here?
Oh, yes, I used to do that. Once one time, but then come to finish, we just finished, you know, talking about. Then we had a Land Army girl, she got married from here. And then one Land Army girl got married from here, the other, and Lil's was a funny one, but that was anyway. But it was, you know, went off all right, everything went off and that.
You had a bomb going off in this street, didn't you? Do you remember that?
The bomb? Oh, I blew us out. It went over in that garden over there, but the blast come this way. So that we went off to find her, because wondered if she was all right, and that blew my front door off, and the window in, and everything else. And it picked my husband up, because he come out to see what, and he picked him up and flung him right over on the lawn, because I was worried about him standing there with the baby, you know. And but we went up, and they were all right. And then there was 35 of us slept in one room, and up my sister's. She'd just had a baby that was 2 days old. And then the other bomb dropped at the back here in allotments. And that went off at 7 o'clock the next morning. We were walking down Stone Hill Road over there. The blast come that way and threw us over in the hedge. That was another bit. I thought, well, that's 2 lots of it. But that really was frightening that night. But you could hear them coming, because they, I don't suppose you remember, they used to throw down, it was more like tissue paper, and that used to make a horrible noise, you know. And we knew that they were going to drop the bombs. We knew that. Well, what could you do? It was so quick, you see. Then we had to do doodle bugs, didn't we? They were frightening. Ooh, were they? I stood upstairs one night with the baby. She was up my mum's, and the doodlebug went between the 2 lots of houses, I went like this. I said, oh, please don't shut off yet, but it shut off when it go over there. Chicken Smealy got it. Oh, that was funny when it was a terrible noise too, you know.
Frightening and hard time, the war years, or do you have very fond memories of it? How do you assess it now?
Well, if you look back on it now, you can have a good laugh. So what you done and what you didn't do and what other people done and all that, you know, if you go right back on it, you could have a good laugh now about it. Well, we very often do have a good laugh, but those days, of course, it wasn't a laugh then, but I mean, we can now. We can have a jolly good laugh about it now.
What do you laugh about?
Well, all the funny things we used to do.
Such as?
You see, I mean, when they used to come out and see about 40 planes up in the air, you know, we always used to dive all different places to get in somewhere in the way. Mind you, that wasn't much good, because if he was going to bomb us, he would bomb us. But all funny little things we used to do.
What did all these gardens look like during the war?
Well, about the same as they do now. Everybody done their garden. Well, we had to. We had to do it for our food. We used to live on our gardens. I mean, mind you, they're not all gardens now. Everything's different because a lot of people put this down to grass and flowers and things like that. But, I mean, we had this one and also a bit as big as this at the back there. What we used to that was allotment out there. We used to have the allotment at all to grow all our potatoes and cabbages and things. So we couldn't buy any, couldn't afford to buy any anyway, in those days.
So you grew all your own vegetables?
All our own vegetables, yes, everything.
And the whole garden was given over to vegetables?
Yes, the whole of our garden was vegetables. Some of everything.
Was that true of the whole street?
Well, nearly everybody up here all done gardening. As I say, we used to help one. One had got the plants, the other one had helped one on different things. I think all of them did. And they used to have the allotment at the back.
What did you grow?
Everything. Potatoes, greens, beans, peas, carrots, parsnips, everything. Everything you can think of. Lettuces, we used to have lettuces all the year round in the garden.
Did you ever go short of food?
No, because what I used to buy was, the food I used to buy was something to satisfy them and, you know, what you get the most of. But we didn't go without food, no. I used to do nearly all my own cooking, you see. I didn't buy only bread. That's the only thing I used to buy. Apart from that, I used to do all my own cooking.
And did you used to eat a lot of vegetables then? More vegetables than you would eat now?
Well, if we had plenty of vegetables over, if somebody ain't got the vegetables, you had my vegetables and I'd bring mine here, you know. We used to help one another out. We all did up here, all us up here, the old people up here. Because there's only three of us up here now left from the war. All the others all gone, poor souls. But, I mean, we lived for our gardens, you know what I mean. And in the mirror, on a Sunday morning, you see every man up here all out on their gardens, all of them. Digging and treating and all everything, you know. But I think a lot of them there then were much tidier than what they are now. A lot of the gardens.
And I understand that you worked with prisoners of war who were here on the land. Tell us about that.
No, I didn't work on the land. I worked where they had wood for making ships and that. And these prisoners of war, they were all Italians. And they used to come, you know, they would move and all the wood. And I was the, take all the, used to have to measure and take all the numbers, and I used to have to do all the secretary work of it. Well, I worked for them a long, long while.
Was this in a factory? Or?
No, it was down Ropers, just over there a little way, just over the road. Had a big place there for all wood. And we used to do that. They belonged to Monty Foreman.
And what were they like to work with?
Very nice fellas, very nice, very helpful, you know. And they never caused no trouble whatsoever. And they worked very hard too. Very hard. But I don't know, I'm not quite sure about it. I think they were billeted in Chelmsford somewhere. They used to bring them in this lorry and come and get them in the lorry. That's all, as I say.
Did you, because a lot of prisoners of war worked on the land around here, did you ever bump into any of those people?
I don't think there was any prisoners of war worked on the land. Not that I know of, anyway. Not round here.
So it was just where you were working?
Only
you
one
came
supposed to
across
say what prisoners of war was the ones who worked on this wood. But I can't remember any of them working on the land.
Betty, you were just a child when the war started. Do you still have vivid memories of those years?
Yes, I can. The day that war broke out, actually, I was on holiday at Rayleigh, believe it or not, and I don't know if they thought England was going to be invaded straight away, but my father came down with a friend of his and brought me back home straight away. Really, the war is something that, well, you remember silly little things, really. Like we used to, when we went to school, we always had to carry a gas mask with us. And when the whistle went, we had to run into an air raid shelter. It was collecting things for different, products, really. We had to go out from school. We had to go picking stinger nettles. We had to have a day picking rose hips. We had to have a day collecting blackberries, because during the war, you see, you couldn't get these things. They used to take them away for medication.
And would the whole school be out picking rose hips?
No, it was only sort of the older children, really. I used to come into that category when we used to go out. There wasn't anybody in Wroxall that had a piece of iron or anything standing in their gardens, because we had to collect it all, because it all had to go to make ships and so forth. Life in general, really, during the war was help everyone, help everybody as well. What if you've got something and somebody else wanted it, right, you shared it with them, and this was great. It really was.
You lived with your grandmother a lot of the time,
Yes,
didn't
I
you?
lived with my grandmother. She lived at Stonehill Farm. I don't know why I lived with grandmother a lot, really. I suppose it was because I just loved grandmother, really. And I had uncles living there. And as I say, we had this shelter, and we was digging for weeks on end, and it was an enormous hole. I mean to say, we had to shore it up with wood and so forth, and then we lined it all out and went down steps to it, and we used to go in there every night. We used to sleep down there, and as soon as it got dark, my grandmother used to say, come on, bed in the shelter, and down we used to go. And we had a little cooking stove in there, and we used to be able to make a cup of tea and all that sort of thing. It was quite an experience, really. I mean, say, why we used to go into a shelter, because if a bomb had fell in the middle of the garden, I mean, say, it would have come right through us full stop, and probably the house would have still been standing. But that was the theory. Everybody had an air raid shelter. If it wasn't in the garden, they would have something indoors, which was, their favourite way of going for protection.
What was it like in there? Was it cold?
No, not really. No, you hadn't got anything else but paraffin oil, so you had a paraffin oil stove, which in this day and age is quite dangerous. Paraffin oil